Hey, what's up everybody? This is Subterfuge501 and today I want to go over all of the skills for the Rogue class in Diablo 4. And just like my last video, we're going to be going over all of the skills for the Rogue and going over one example of an upgrade for every single skill. And if you don't know how the skill trees in Diablo 4 work, all of your skills are put into their different categories in different parts of the skill tree. Once you put a point into a skill, you can then choose one upgrade, and then after that first upgrade, you can choose between one of two additional upgrades. But we're just going to go over that first upgrade for every single skill so you get a good example of what these upgrades are going to be. And first off, we have basic skills. Now, basic skills for the Rogue are also going to generate combo points, and that's going to come from one of the options for the Rogue's unique class ability. And that class mechanic causes basic skills to generate combo points and then core skills to use up those combo points. So first off, we have Puncture, generates one combo point, lucky hit chance of 50%. You throw blades a short distance, dealing damage. Every third cast slows enemies by 20% for 2 seconds, and critical strikes will always slow. And then an example of the upgrade is Enhanced Puncture. Gain 2 energy when Puncture damages a crowd-controlled enemy. And basic skills don't cost anything, so you're able to spam these as much as you want. So getting Puncture in the first upgrade is already having quite a lot of different mechanics tied into the skill, being able to slow enemies, crits always slowing, and then if you puncture a crowd-controlled enemy with the upgrade, you get 2 energy, and one of the crowd controls is a slow, so now you can generate energy just with this one basic skill. Next up, we have Heartseeker, generates 1 combo point, lucky hit chance of 50%, fire an arrow that seeks out an enemy, dealing damage and increasing your critical strike chance against them by 3% for 4 seconds up to 15%. And as you'll notice when going through all these basic skills, all the basic skills for the Rogues are a bit more complex than basic skills for a lot of the other classes because they usually have something else tied in, whether it be slow from Puncture or now critical strike increase from Heartseeker. And an upgrade would be Enhanced Heartseeker. When Heartseeker critically strikes, gain 8% increased attack speed for 4 seconds. Double this amount if the enemy is vulnerable. So this is actually incredibly strong, and I would not be surprised if Heartseeker is used quite a lot, specifically for the crit and for this attack speed increase, because all you need is something else that can apply vulnerable easily, and then you're getting 18% increased attack speed when you critically strike with this one upgrade. So this is quite a lot of stats being obtained from a basic skill. Next up, we have Forceful Arrow, generates 1 combo point, lucky hit chance of 50%, fire a powerful arrow at an enemy, dealing 25% damage. Every third cast makes the enemy vulnerable for 2 seconds. And again, another effect tied to a basic skill. An upgrade would be Enhanced Forceful Arrow. Every third cast of Forceful Arrow additionally has a 15% increased critical strike chance. So just more stat increases and effects being integrated into these basic skills. Then we have Invigorating Strike, generate 1 combo point, lucky hit chance of 50%, melee attack an enemy, dealing damage, and increasing energy regeneration by 20% for 3 seconds. Then for the upgrade, we have Enhanced Invigorating Strike, damaging a crowd-controlled or injured enemy with Invigorating Strike increases its energy regeneration bonus to 30%. So now if you use this against any crowd-controlled enemy, you're getting a pretty big increase to your energy regeneration. Then finally, we have Blade Shift, generates 1 combo point, lucky hit chance of 35%, quickly stab your victim for damage, and shift, allowing you to move freely through enemies for 3 seconds. And this one also seems incredibly strong because pretty much anything in Diablo games that allows you to move through enemies ends up being really strong. I think that's why whirlwind builds for barbarians are usually very, very strong. Then we have Enhanced Blade Shift. Damaging an enemy with Blade Shift grants 5% increased movement speed while Blade Shift is active, up to 20%. So now you could potentially be moving through enemies and having a massive speed boost on top of that. And next up we have the core skills, and core skills are going to be double important for rogues if you're using the combo point system, because core skills are going to be using the combo points from basic skills to increase the power or add additional effects. So first off, we have Barrage, energy cost of 30, lucky hit chance of 20%. Unleash a barrage of 5 arrows that expands outward, each dealing damage. Each arrow has a 20% chance to ricochet off an enemy up to 1 time. Ricochets deal 40% of the arrow's base damage. So you shoot out this barrage of arrows, and every one of those arrows has a chance to ricochet off that first enemy hit 1 time, and the ricochets only deal 40% of the original damage of this ability. Now, combo points increase damage and arrows fired, and you can have up to 3 combo points, so it's 31 to 40% damage increase and 6 to 8 arrows total. So it's not an increase of 6 to 8 arrows, it's just 6 to 8 arrows total. So if you had 3 combo points, all the damage of Barrage would be increased by 41%, and it would fire a total of 8 arrows, and all 8 of those arrows could ricochet and deal additional damage. Our upgrade would be Barrage's ricochet chance is increased to 100% for arrows that damage a vulnerable enemy or critically strike. So this first upgrade for Barrage could potentially make these arrows have a 100% chance to ricochet, just because in a lot of builds there's going to be a really high chance to either hit a vulnerable enemy or be a critical strike. Next up we have Rapid Fire, 25 energy cost, lucky hit chance of 20%, rapidly fire 5 arrows, each dealing damage. And just like for Barrage, your damage and arrows fired is increased. So the damage increase is 22 to 29%, and the arrows fired is 6 to 8. Then for the upgrade, each subsequent arrow from a rapid fire has a 5% increased critical strike chance up to 25% for the 5th arrow. Now, I'm not sure how this upgrade is going to work with combo points. I'm assuming it's just going to keep increasing. So instead of capping out at 25% for the 5th arrow, it will just go 30%, 35%, 40% for firing those additional arrows. Then next up, we have Penetrating Shot, energy cost of 35, lucky chance of 50%. Fire an arrow that pierces through all enemies in a line, dealing pretty big damage. And combo points increase damage and grant a chance to knock down enemies for 1.5 seconds. And the damage increase is 116 to 169%, and the knockdown chance is 10 up to 30%. The buffs for using combo points for this skill seem pretty crazy, and the maximum damage for this skill with all the combo points is pretty huge. This amount of damage is usually something you would see from like ultimate skills. Then an upgrade would be Penetrating Shout, deals 20% increased damage per enemy it pierces. And I'm wondering if there's going to be some cheese to get this to proc more effectively. But if you're using Penetrating Shout and maybe getting upgrades for that from legendaries or other effects that maybe make Penetrating Shot wider or hit more targets, this upgrade can make this skill just do ridiculous damage after going through a handful of targets. Then next up, we have Flurry, an energy cost of 25, lucky hit chance of 35%. Unleash a flurry of stabs and slashes, dealing damage to enemies in front of you. Then for combo points, it increases damage and grants a 30% attack speed bonus. So the damage increase is 95 to 133%, and the duration on that attack speed bonus is 1.5 seconds up to 4.5 seconds. So this is obviously going to be more of a melee build, and this is going to be a pretty strong cleaving effect. And also mixing this with combo points, you're going to be able to have this attack speed increase for most of the time, especially if you have a few skills or effects that increase your energy regeneration. Then finally, we have Twisting Blades, energy cost of 30, lucky hit chance of 35%. Impale an enemy with your blades, dealing damage and making them take 8% increased damage while impaled. After 1.5 seconds, the blades return to you, piercing enemies for even higher damage. So you're basically throwing a blade out, impaling an enemy. It seems like the blade's going to stick in them while impaled. They take more damage while impaled. Then your blade comes back to you and deals even more damage, hitting any targets while coming back to you. And combo points increase the damage and grant a movement speed bonus. The damage increase is 57 up to 83%, and the movement speed bonus is 20 up to 60%. That's a pretty massive move speed bonus when being used with higher combo points. And next up, we have agility skills, starting off with Shadow Step with a 9-second cooldown and 100% lucky hit chance. Become unstoppable and quickly move through the shadows to stab your victim from behind for pretty big damage. Gain 50% increased movement speed for 2 seconds afterward. And unstoppable means you can't be CC'd at all. And I'm pretty sure the only thing that can stop you while unstoppable is dying. And then the upgrade is damaging an enemy with Shadow Step increases your critical strike chance against that enemy by 8% for 3 seconds. And honestly, this first upgrade doesn't seem very strong, especially with an ability that has a cooldown. And it's probably gonna more be used as a defensive or utility skill than be used as a damaging skill. Next up, we have Caltrops, has 2 charges, charge cooldown of 12 seconds, and a lucky hit chance of 25%. You leap backwards and throw Caltrops on the ground, dealing damage and slowing enemies by 50%. They last 6 seconds. And then for the upgrade, enemies take 3% increased damage from all sources each second they're in Caltrops. And this doesn't seem like a lot, but Caltrops last 6 seconds, so this is actually going to be a pretty decent damage increase building up over time. Then finally, we have Dash, has 2 charges, 10-second charge cooldown, and a 25% lucky hit chance. You dash forward and slash through enemies for damage. So pretty simple, just a dash that deals damage when going through enemies. Then for the upgrade, enemies damaged by dash take 20% increased critical strike damage for 5 seconds. And this upgrade seems to be the strongest in this category because 20% increased critical strike damage is actually quite a bit, especially if you're running a high critical strike chance build. And most people are probably going to want to use dash anyway, just because it allows you to move around the map so quickly. And next up, we have Subterfuge Skills, starting off with Smoke Grenade, 15-second cooldown. Throw a smoky concoction at enemies that dazes them for 4 seconds. Now, I'm pretty sure dazing them is a crowd control effect that drops off when they're damaged, so kind of like a blind or a sap from, say, a rogue from WoW. Then the upgrade is enemies affected by Smoke Grenade take 15% increased damage. So a pretty big damage increase, especially considering this is an AoE effect. Then next up, we have Poison Trap with a 10-second cooldown, a lucky hit chance of 33%. Place a trap that arms after 1.25 seconds. It activates when an enemy moves within range, applying a massive poison damage over 9 seconds to all enemies in the area. And the current scaling on this is 435% damage over 9 seconds, which is completely ridiculous. This is doing more damage than a lot of ultimates are doing, and in an AoE radius, it is over 9 seconds, but that is a ridiculous amount of damage. And the upgrade would be Poison Trap immobilizes enemies for 2 seconds when it activates. So now enemies are going to be rooted in place for 2 seconds and be taking just some ridiculous amount of damage over time. And then next up, we have Concealment, 20-second cooldown, vanish from sight, gaining stealth for 4 seconds. During Concealment, you additionally become unstoppable, gain 25% movement speed, and can move through enemies freely. Using any attack will break Concealment. And a rogue is not really a rogue until they have a stealth mechanic somewhat like this. And this is actually really strong because you're unstoppable, you can't be CC'd, you have increased movement speed, and you can freely move through enemies, so this can get you out of sticky situations quite easily. And the upgrade for this is you gain 40 energy when you enter Concealment. So that's going to be really nice because in a fight, say you use all of your energy, then you use Concealment to try to get back on a target, maybe if you're in PvP, or to move and go to a higher priority target, or you killed an enemy, then you conceal, get to the next enemy quickly, and now you have a lot of energy to quickly kill that enemy as well. Then finally, we have Dark Shroud, 20-second cooldown, surround yourself with up to 5 protective shadows and gain 8% damage reduction per active shadow. Each time you take direct damage, that damage is reduced and a shadow is consumed. So a pretty strong damage reduction. that also is going to be better or worse depending on what type of enemy you're going against. Say if you're going against a boss that has very slow but very high damage attacks, this would be better than, say, a boss that hits super quickly but has lower damaging attacks, because it would just use up all of your shadows super quickly. Then an upgrade would be Dark Shroud's shadows have a 10% chance not to be consumed. And this adds a pretty strong effect to the base ability, the shadows having a chance not to be consumed, and I'm wondering if there's going to be more ways to increase that chance, because if there is, you could potentially have a build that a lot of your defenses are focused around this skill and giving your shadows a high chance to not be consumed. And next up, we have Imbuements, which is actually a concept that's pretty unique to the rogue in Diablo 4. You're essentially going to be imbuing your attacks with a different element. So first off, we have Poison Imbuement, a cooldown of 9 seconds, lucky hit chance of 33%. Imbue your weapons with lethal poison. Your next 2 imbuable skills deal poison damage and apply a massive poison damage over 5 seconds. And I don't think any of these skills are currently labeled as imbuable skills, but all your skills aren't going to be imbuable, so it's only going to be certain skills that can trigger the effect of these imbuements. But this damage over time is actually pretty strong on this poison effect. And the upgrade is Poison Imbuement's poison duration is increased by 1 second. So it goes from 5 to 6 seconds, and this is most likely going to increase its damage quite a lot as well. Then we have Shadow Imbuement, 9-second cooldown, lucky hit chance of 33%. Imbue your weapons with festering shadows. Your next 2 imbuable skills deal shadow damage and inflict enemies such that they explode for more damage on death. Direct damage to infected enemies deals an additional 4% shadow damage. So this is actually a pretty interesting skill because you are getting a small amount of increased damage from the shadow damage proccing, but when killing enemies that are affected, it now does a big AoE damage effect. And then upgrade for this is Lucky Hit. Critically striking an enemy inflicted by Shadow Imbuement has up to a 30% chance to create a mini explosion, dealing lesser shadow damage to enemies surrounding them. So now with this upgrade, you just have a chance to cause a lower damaging version of that shadow explosion that's normally triggered from killing enemies. So Shadow Imbuement has a pretty big focus on dealing AoE damage. Then finally, we have Cold Imbuement with a 9-second cooldown. Imbue your weapons with frigid energies. Your next 2 imbuable skills deal cold damage and chill enemies for up to 50%. Cold imbued skills deal 15% increased damage to crowd-controlled enemies. Now, even though it doesn't say it on the tooltip of this skill, you should be able to chill enemies enough to freeze them, because that's how cold generally works in Diablo 4. Say if you're on a sorceress and you keep chilling an enemy, at a certain point, it will freeze them. And likewise with the other imbuements, if there are any other effects that that element normally has, those should also trigger that normal effect. And then for an upgrade for this, it's Lucky Hit. Cold Imbue skills have up to a 30% chance to make enemies vulnerable for 3 seconds. So this imbuement's also going to be really strong for making enemies vulnerable. And then finally, we have the ultimate category. And keep in mind, with the ultimate category, you can only have one ultimate skill being used at one time. Any of the other skills from any of the other categories, you can mix and match them in any way you want. You could use 4 basic skills at the same time if you want to, but ultimates, you only get one at a time. So starting off, we have Shadow Clone with a 60-second cooldown. Your shadow mimics your actions for 15 seconds. The shadow deals 60% of your damage. And usually effects like this are generally stronger than they seem, depending on if they mimic absolutely everything. Because if they mimic everything, they're probably also going to be able to proc your on-hit effects or other effects like that, meaning you're going to end up getting more value than just their base damage. And an upgrade for this is you are unstoppable for 5 seconds after casting Shadow Clone. So you can't be CC'd by anything for 5 seconds. So that would be really good because you're popping this big cooldown that gives you massive damage increase. Now you're able to make use of that increased damage a lot more effectively, and this would be very strong in PvP. Next up, we have Rain of Arrows, 60-second cooldown, lucky hit chance of 20%. Arrows rain down over a large area 2 times each wave, dealing pretty massive damage. So just a pretty basic, massive AoE damaging ability. Then an upgrade is imbuement skill effects applied by rain of arrow have 20% increased potency. So like I mentioned, it doesn't mention on the actual tooltips, but this is an imbuable skill. And now any imbuement that's applied from this skill has 20% increased potency. And this could be really strong with the poison imbuement because that already does massive damage. So it's going to be stronger and you could just apply this massive poison damage over time to all enemies on your screen. And then finally, we have a death trap. A cooldown of 45 seconds, lucky hit chance of 40%. Place a trap that arms after 1.25 seconds. It activates when an enemy moves within range, dealing massive damage to enemies in this area. It's currently at 316%, so this is going to be a massive AoE damaging effect in one attack, making this a very heavy burst. And then an upgrade would be enemies are pulled into death trap when it activates. And this upgrade means this is probably going to be used on a lot of builds. And if you can get some cooldown, which is going to be much rarer in Diablo 4, so you can use this effect more, this is going to be very strong for clearing out big groups of enemies. You throw a trap down, it activates, it pulls all enemies in, then does this massive AoE damage attack that's probably going to take out a lot of those enemies. But that's all the skills we currently have information on for the Rogue in Diablo 4. And I think the Rogue is going to be generally a much more complex class because most of the abilities we just went over had different effects tied into them, whether it be vulnerability, whether it be damage over time, whether it be stacking up critical strike chance. There's tons of different effects tied into all these skills, even on basic skills. And then there's more effects tied into it when you start getting into the upgrades. So there's going to be a lot of different things to track. And I think people that are super into making very complex builds and being able to track everything and try to min-max all of your different stats and effects are going to have a pretty good time playing the Rogue. But that's all I want to go over. So subscribe if you want to see more Diablo 4 or other videos. Leave a like if you liked the video. Leave a comment down below what you guys think about all the skills and upgrades for the Rogue, and thanks for watching.